hearing is Come Together by Sir Rod and the Blues Doctors. I'm going to be talking with two of the band members, Adam Gussow, who wrote the music, and Rod Patterson wrote the lyrics. And we're also talking with Bruce Bond, the founder and CEO of the Common Ground Committee, which helped pull together the video and saw the promise of this music for a larger purpose. Bruce, this is an unusual musical venture for Common Ground. Can you start by telling us how you came to this?
You bet, Gail. There's a long story behind it. We, as you said, what we do is we bring people together with different views in an effort to show people what good looks like. So we're working to bring healing to the challenges of incivility and polarization. And our experience is that people have to see that it's possible and see how it's done. And in so doing, it inspires them to do the same. That's been our experience. And so we've really been focused on doing events and podcasts and that sort of thing. And fortunately, we've developed a following. And one of the people that have been following us is Adam Gussow, who is here on the line. And there's a history there. Adam and I were actually college roommates our senior year. And so we've known each other for a long time. Adam has, every now and then, dropped me a note about the work we're doing and so forth. And so one day out of the blue, I get this message where Adam let me know that this album and this song in particular was going to be produced, and he saw that it fit with our mission. And he said, "Well, I don't know exactly what it would look like, but maybe we could work together on something." And then all of a sudden, we got this idea. We'd do a music video, something different, and so that led us to where we are now. And I think, I love the video, and I think it does inspire. I think it's uplifting, particularly right now when we're dealing with a pandemic and we're becoming. We're trying to get through an economic challenge, and there's a lot of angst in the streets right now. I think it's really important to give people a chance to take a step back and enjoy something. And I think the song and the message behind it is very uplifting, full of hope. And it was just a delight to be able to do this with my friend of, I won't tell you how many years, but it's a long time, a lot of decades. And
40 or 45, right? It's a lot of decades.
Yeah. And so it's just all fun, and our hope is that people that see it will experience the same amount of enjoyment that we had putting it together.
In Washington, you hear a lot of talk about finding common ground. And words like fun and enjoy are usually not part of that talk at all. When did you see that there might be a place for a searing harmonica solo in this discussion?
Okay, so I didn't actually think about it that way. One thing I obviously know about Adam is, and don't blush, Adam is a virtuoso on the blues harmonica. And so if, we have high standards here when it comes to production and with our videos and so forth that we do, they're extremely professionally produced. And I saw an opportunity for a very high standard of music to be merged with our message here. There's no one better in the blues scene when it comes to playing the harp, as the people on the inside like to call it, as opposed to the harmonica, than Adam. And I just thought, wow, this is a great opportunity to find a way to sort of merge the quality of his work with the work that we do. So that was kind of where my thought was going, and that led us to where we are.
Adam, when you wrote that music, and I understand when we put it together a timeline here, you're the first part. You wrote the music and then the lyrics. When you wrote the music, were you thinking about COVID-19, about a country falling apart politically?
Oh gosh, no. I mean, the thing about this was it was something that the music. When I say the music, sort of the lyrics are entirely Rod's work, entirely, but the musical background, the 4-chord thing, it's not really a blues. It's kind of reminiscent of the recording engineer. He said, "You've written a jam band anthem." It's sort of a blues rock thing from almost like the 70s or late 60s in a sense. It's not a typical blues progression. It's a 4-chord and it goes on and on and on and on with just those 4 chords. But it felt to me when I came up with it like it had a kind of magical power. And so we did a YouTube video back in 2018. The guitar player, Alan Gross, who's also a professor here at the University of Mississippi, in my living room. And I call it Yes We Do! ! I didn't really know what it was about. It had no words. I think I was thinking a little bit about the sort of euphoria maybe that people had on the night that Barack Obama, having said yes we can, kind of won and brought America together that way. So I honestly, there was that element of just it was a good feeling vibe. But here's the thing. We put it on YouTube. I forgot about it. And we'll tell you the story about how this whole album came into being, but basically we had done a session in January and we needed a follow-up session in February to record the last 3 or 4 songs. The day before Rod was going to drive to Mississippi for that follow-up session, at about 4 in the afternoon, I was thinking about stuff we could do. I was co-producing the album, what's the repertoire? And I remembered the song. And I went back and I looked at it, and at YouTube, product research, 271 likes, 1 dislike. I have 800 videos probably on 2 YouTube channels, and nothing like that, right? And I thought, people like that. They felt the same power in that I felt. So I sent it to Rod. I sent Rod the link. And I said, I don't know if there's a song here, but listen to this. Rod's going to have to tell you what then transpired. But that's how it began, was with a sort of orphaned YouTube clip and a test run of this thing, which had a really kind of wild blues rock kind of energy to it. Rod, the story's Rod's now. Right?
No, we're going straight to him, but I don't want to drop your jam band anthem because, Bruce, I don't know if you've thought of Common Ground as a jam band before, but I think it's an appropriate image. I'd stay with it.
I hadn't thought about it, but it is kind of interesting.
Yeah, it is.
That's definitely food for thought. Yeah.
Rod. Yes. I heard a story about this, and I just have to ask you right off because it depressed me when I heard it. Did you write the lyrics in like a half an hour?
No, it was a little longer than that. It was an hour and a half.
Well, that's still concerning, I have to tell you. But go ahead. What did you think when you heard this music?
Well, Adam was saying it was something about Yes We Do or something like that. But immediately when I heard it, first and foremost, I was hoping I didn't like it because I had been rehearsing some other music for about a month before it was time to go down and record. And I said, I got to leave like 4 in the morning, and he sends me this music, and I'm praying that I don't like it. I hit the link, and immediately I fell in love with it. And immediately it also reminded me of hippie music. It was like the 60s, and Janis Joplin came to mind. So I went on to YouTube and I looked at a YouTube video of Janis just to try to get her vibe. And she said one thing, give me a little piece of your heart. And she said love. Love and heart came up. And then the process started then. And I got the first little, I don't know how I record. I'm friends with LL Cool J's DJ cut creator. And he told me LL Cool J's process is you write the hook first and then build your lyric around it. Well, I got the you wearing red and I'm wearing blue with the real. I got that. And then I started building around it. So it took about an hour and a half. But now I don't think that always happens because in contrast, we have another song on our album called So Mean. It took over 10 years to write that one. So.
Well, listen, this it shows in this. It just... the fit between the sound and the words is incredible. And I have to ask you about the very first line. I thought we settled this long ago. Now, I recognize that of the four of us here, my long ago is longer than yours. But Janis Joplin is my,
Well, I'm an old soul too.
Long ago.
I'm an old soul too. So for me, I thought when Barack Obama became president, it should have settled a lot of things as far as, of course, racism wasn't going away, but I thought we might have turned a page and new horizons and new possibilities. So I thought we settled this with that. And then, of course, here we go. And that's the beauty of the lyric.
Here we go.
That's it.
It could be plugged in for anybody, for where you are.
If can we take a look at the video that covers the opening, because it sets interesting images in thought. When we had a chance to talk about this as a group, we immediately talked about what settling this long ago meant. Now, there are images from the 60s, I hate to tell you three, in that video. There are also images of face masks, lots of face masks. How do you see the 60s past, which you have read about if you didn't live, and the COVID present, and an election coming up, and the post-Obama era? How does all that fit together in the way you understood the lyrics you were writing?
For me, I believe we have to come together. I mean, it is imperative that we come together. We're fooling ourselves. If blacks think they can get along without whites, and whites can get along without blacks, and we can get along without Asians and get along without Latins, and it is foolish. And I think, I don't know what your religion is, but I believe we're set out here in the middle, on this little blue rock in the middle of nothing, nowhere. We gotta come together. I mean, so for me, I just really believe, and I think this was divine intervention where the lyrics came so fast. And before COVID even hit, I wrote this maybe, 2 or 3 weeks before COVID hit?
Yeah, I mean, we were doing this in mid-February, and nobody was taking it seriously. I mean, it had not impacted. They weren't taking it seriously for another month, really. I remember being in New Orleans in mid to late March, and just coming back from that was when suddenly everything broke loose with the NCAA.
I hadn't even heard of a COVID.
No. No, and so one of the things that amazes me is how prophetic it is. That's what prophetic means, is that you're seeing something or sensing something, and suddenly it comes into its full relevance maybe a little later, somewhere down the line. So yeah, the moment the COVID thing happened, and then of course, the George Floyd thing. And so there's a sort of virus, you could say a virus of racism that's sort of out there. Which again adds new resonance to the idea that I thought we'd settled this long ago. Of course, the proximate cause for me coming to Bruce was, you're wearing red, I'm wearing blue, and I'm thinking, Bruce, aren't those the kind of dialogues that you're staging, like again and again? Condoleezza Rice and John Kerry.
And don't forget, Adam, the whole thing with you and my uncle, black and white coming together in the documentary. I mean, that's also was in my mindset about the band, us coming together as well. So
we have a long story, Gail. Are you ready for it?
No, actually, it's my
sort of
it's my
backstory.
next question. There is a fourth figure here that is absolutely present in this room, but we haven't mentioned his name, and that's Sterling McGee.
Yes.
Could you tell us, Adam, how you encountered him and how he kind of brought us all together today?
So, well, what's interesting is that Rod's part of the backstory is actually a little bit earlier than mine. Well, mine began in 1986 when, as a grad school dropout I'd been a musician for a couple of years, making my living as a musician and a busker. And I decided to put street music away and get a straight job. And so I had a tutoring job in the South Bronx. In 86, that was a pretty tough place to be. And I was driving from where I lived in North Manhattan through Harlem. I'd had a 6-month career as a kind of as the white boy who went to jazz jam sessions. So Harlem in itself did not unnerve me, but there were no white people at all, and I was familiar with sort of the being a jazz room. But then I was driving through one day and I saw this remarkable guitar player. He was so remarkable that I just stopped the car. I got out, I watched him playing one hi-hat cymbal, playing incredible guitar. His name turned out to be Sterling McGee, but nobody called him that, and I didn't find out that that was his name for a while. All of this is archived in a Netflix documentary called Satan and Adam, that sort of first day. People said, I said, "Who's that?" And they said, "Well, that's Mr. Satan." And I said, or Satan. I think at that point it was just Satan. Then when he started calling me Mr. Adam, I called him Mr. Satan, and then suddenly it was Mr. Satan. They said, "That's Satan. Everybody in Harlem knows Satan." And I thought, somebody just uttered those words, "That's Satan. Everybody in Harlem knows Satan." And then I thought, well, Adam. And so Satan, Adam, I literally, and we played together. I came down the next day with my little mouse amplifier and my harmonicas and my mic, and I asked him if I could sit in. He said, "Sure." We got a big crowd on the first song. He ran me ragged, tossed me around. We got a whole lot of tip money on that first song. It all went into his bucket. He looked at me, I looked at him, and I didn't even, he said, you know who I am. I am Satan. He said, "Your name," give a hand for, I said, "Adam." He goes, "Well, give a hand for Mr. Adam." And that was it. That was October 19th, 1986. We played on the streets in Harlem for the next 4 years during a period of time that was, New York was blacks and whites at each other's throats. It was Michael Griffith being killed in Howard Beach. It was Yusef Hawkins. All of that stuff was happening while we were out there bodying forth brotherhood. For me, when you mention the 60s, I think about John Lewis, and I think about who just passed away, and I think about his talk about beloved community. That was a very important phrase for me. I saw it in King's writings, and I was doing a lot of reading during the period when I was playing with Sterling, with Mr. Satan. And I think the 60s, that was the goal of the civil rights movement, was beloved community. One of those things, there was it wasn't just about being together, but it was about sort of recognizing our oneness in some way, almost like a Baha'i element, sort of a oneness beyond color, a human oneness. That was what John Lewis preached. And that's what Sterling and I kind of lived out, and eventually we became an act called Satan and Adam. We recorded an album in '91 and had a 7 or 8 year career, and then a sort of, at no point, by the way, did I know that Rod existed at that point. And with the most remarkable thing, so I got an email in maybe November of last year, and he said, "Hi, my name's Rod Patterson. I'm Sterling McGee's nephew," and a few more things that just really intrigued me. And we had a conversation, and we realized that we had some of the same stories. He said, "Well, I want Rod to tell his part of the story," but it was almost like, Rod, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but it was almost like two people who discover that they're brothers because they both had the same mentor, father figure, elder in their lives, profoundly affecting them. I'd had this long relationship, but Rod had his own relationship that preceded mine with Sterling, and it's a very important part of this whole story. And only he can tell
I don't
it.
want to urge everyone to drop what they're doing and look at that film, Satan and Adam, on Netflix. It really is incredible. And one of the things that you hear from the crowd watching these two men, your uncle and Adam, it happens a few times in this film. You hear someone say, "What is this white guy doing here? Is he going to steal black music? Is he going to steal his music again?" Now, here, you made your own connection with a white guy. What was in your mind when you wrote that video, when you wrote that email?
Well, after watching the video and seeing their friendship and kinship, the way their friendship was built, and the way my uncle had mentored him, I thought he was a cool guy, literally. And the way the video just kind of supported, Adam literally took the back seat and gave really my uncle the glory. So I was just amazed at that. Now, as far as reaching out to him, I just really wanted to I figured that they had generated a lot of fans. A lot of people know about Satan and Adam now. And at the end of one of my rehearsals, I realized some of my uncle's music came on, and I started singing to it, and our voices meshed, and I realized I sound an awful lot like him. So as a tribute, I reached out to Adam and say, hey, congratulations on the Netflix video, and by the way, I can sing my uncle's stuff. I would love to do some kind of tribute to honor him and to keep the music going some kind of way. And that was it. It was just really from the heart and nothing else. Adam said, well, he replied immediately, that's a wonderful idea. But he still didn't know if I can sing like my uncle or not, because, you know.
That's true. That's true. I wasn't sure. But and you told me that Sterling had lived with you and your mom in the period like after he had become Satan. He dropped Sterling McGee. He'd had a kind of almost a breakdown, and then he brought his guitar sort of down and lived with you guys for a year or two in the early '80s before I met him. So you had that whole thing with him.
Well, it was Uncle Sterling to me, but they called him Satan around the neighborhood in the hood, and everybody else, he was a little mentally challenged. He had a breakdown at one point, but now I tell you a funny story is how he became Satan is because my grandmother was very, very religious. My grandmother, my grandfather. My grandfather was a deacon. And so just to aggravate them, he said, I'll call me Satan. So that aggravated them to the highest. But I always showed a lot of respect to him, and I think he liked me because I would listen to him tell me about all his theories and he was a mathematical genius, and he'd make these puzzles. Mm-hmm. And I got the nickname Star Child because I was the only one could put his puzzles together, and so he just put me under his arm. But musically, we never really shared. I know he knew I was doing Michael Jackson stuff, and he would say stuff about the Michael Jackson thing, but he would just always talk to me all the time about his theories, and I was the one to listen to him about heaven and hell and all the other stuff going on he wanted to talk about. But he was always out of all my uncles, he was my favorite, because I guess we both were a little crazy. So.
Well, the power of his music, the music of Adam and Satan together, is really stunning.
It's just like chocolate and peanut butter.
And that's another great line in this movie. Actually, I feel like it's a movie because I see it visually as well as hearing it. We're so much stronger together. One thing that Bruce and Common Ground have been trying to do ever since they came together was to define what it is to be a common grounder, to be someone who has a capacity to reach across lines like this. Well, obviously, you two did. You established your own common ground with the help of a man you both were devoted to in respects, deeply appreciative of.
Oh, yes.
And that comes out in the work. But how literally are you stronger together? Is your music stronger together?
I like, Adam, I'm going to say this real quick and I'm going to throw it to you. I think we're like Paul and John Lennon. You know, it's just like he just brings out. I mean, ever since I got with him, I'm doing things musically I didn't even know lyrically I could even do. Just being in his presence, and in the studio. It was my first time in the studio, really recording, and so he's just been mentoring me. So I'm his apprentice. I'm Adam's apprentice.
Well, this is the crazy thing, you know. I mean, you have to remember. I mean, so Rod drove 5.5 hours. He walked into a second floor. It's a big old house in Water Valley, Mississippi that a recording engineer that I'd worked with had arranged to us record in. It's a bedroom. We set up in basically a bedroom with mics and stuff around the recording studio and the other thing. And he walks in. We have not had a chance to
play together,
to rehearse anything. We've never played together. And we initially were going to just get together. Rod's idea was basically, I'd like to move more into this blues thing, and we could do a tribute thing. Let's record a demo. And I said, great. We looked at Birmingham, could not afford stuff, so he agreed to drive all the way to Mississippi. But he walks in. I don't know. I mean, I'm playing drums and harmonicas. I'm not just a harmonica player. The Blues Doctors, my pre-existing duo, I'm playing drums and an amplified harmonica, and we have a guitar player. That's not the easiest thing to walk into and just jam with as a singer. And Rod walked in, and there's something weird.
Yes.
There's something supernatural.
It fit me like
I don't know it because it shouldn't have
it fit
worked
me
as
like a
well as it
glove.
did.
I felt like
now,
I was home.
But you know, and Rod had been woodshedding with the old Satan and Adam CDs. This is a key part of this. And I said, well, is he just going to sound like Mr. Satan? Like, how's that going to work? Well, no. And so, but there was that uncanny. Uncanny means the same and different. So there's that uncanny thing. You could call it a family thing. You could call it he's been woodshedding with the guy's music. But I think that enabled, that sort of bridged things. Actually, the fact that there were recordings. But none of that made a difference on this song Come Together. That was a brand new original tune. He'd written these lyrics. He walks in, I think, Rod, remind me, you had your iPhone up.
Yeah,
and
I was
like,
trying to sing
here's
it
what
to
I
you.
did. He sort of gave me, sing it to me. And then we just kind of laid it down. And we did what were called scratch vocals. So basically, Alan and I just played for 4 minutes, 5 minutes. And Rod kind of sang along with it. And then he ended up coming back and sort of redoing the vocals perfectly, like within the space that was there to do. You'd never know that by listening. But I'm just saying, at every step along the way, and I've produced maybe 7 or 8, maybe 10 CDs at this point, albums. There's always something that goes wrong. That didn't really happen with us. It's like everything, all those moments when you just hope for the best case scenario, we actually experience best case scenario. So how are we stronger together? The evidence is indisputable. We just are. Something came out that was greater than the sum of the parts. From my perspective, I've never been in anything quite like it.
Adam, one of the striking things about the film, about your music together, is his Sterling McGee's comments about blues, how he saw it not as depressing, but as joyful. Blue as a color. You wake up, the sky is blue. That's a happy, joyful thing. And it is the level of joy in the recording you folks have done is remarkable. And I wondered if you could just give us a flash of that incredible searing harmonica solo at the end.
The searing harmonica. Well, I mean,
Harmonica.
it's a 4-chord, so it's not really a blues. I'm playing bluesy harmonica on it, and it goes. I think I dropped a beat there. You know, it's funny, without the chords, it's a little harder to conjure up the vibe of the song, and of course I can't quite do the chords on this.
It's only in your mind.
It's only in my mind. But that's
I would second that.
That's the searing. So there you go, something like that.
Hey, Gail, can I comment on that for just a second?
You're about to, because I had a question to ask you, and the question would have been this, and I think your comment's going to relate to it. The moments in Common Ground Committee when you're just talking, looking for something that is in common, teasing it forward, it doesn't sound like that. When you listen to that, did you pick up anything about your as long as I've known you, you've talked about what it is that it takes to create common ground. Is joy now one of those elements?
Well, it is in this sense, is that as far as our work goes, is that there's so little of that we see in the news and so forth that where we actually see, like say, you see it demonstrated. That when you do see it demonstrated, there's absolutely a sense of joy that comes out of that. It's like, yeah, that's exactly what it looks like. That's what we want to see. I'll just give you an example. Another guy that we'd known about for a long time that Adam actually knows through the music world is a guy named Daryl Davis, who's a blues musician. Actually, he's multi genres, if you will. But make long story short, he's a black man who has, through simply conversation and finding common ground, with members of the Ku Klux Klan have, in so many words, led them to see that the way they see the world, the way they see those who are black is wrong. It's not. It's actually not right. Not. I mean, it's clearly there's the moral side, but they're wrong. Their assumptions about black Americans was just wrong, and so they left the Klan. And we're talking over 200 people, and it was not through protest. Not, and I want to be clear about this. Not that there isn't a place for protest. It's very important, as we're seeing today. It has helped us become more aware of the need. But there are also times where when you sit with people and you have the conversation, where you humanize someone, where you find like Darryl found out that these folks, you know, they've got families. They're trying to get their kids into good schools. They want what's best for them. And these are all things that they shared. And so, and that was all through developing a relationship and so forth. And we actually have a podcast about this. I'd encourage people to go look at it. But when you actually hear this and you see the result of it, it's extremely joyous. And I have to say that, you know, when we heard the music, the first time I heard it, I thought, I really like this, and we've got to do something with it. People today, they really need to be uplifted, and that's what this does. Yes. And we just heard Adam play. I mean, come on, you can't hear that and go, how cool is that?
That is very cool.
Right?
You're right. That's
so
the power of music.
We sensed immediately, you know, we sensed that right away.
I think I'd love to go back to Rod again about his actual lyrics. Because you're right. I mean, the line that grabs you when you first hear it is, you're wearing red and I'm wearing blue. Mm-hmm. And I covered Congress for many years, and we talked about that all the time. And every year there'd be a study to show, you've got a spectrum, red and blue, and there's some overlap. Strom Thurmond and the Democrats were still together. And then over time, and I still remember the year that there was no Democrat more conservative than any Republican, and no Republican more conservative. In other words, there was nothing, no common ground. Now, this was cerebral. In the words of your lyrics, which I'd love to hear again, just this part, you're wearing red, I'm wearing blue.
You're worried about me, and I'm worried about you. You wear red, and I'm wearing blue. When the real enemy lies, cheats, and kills, taking everything from us at will. Open our minds, y'all.
But you go from that to, we need to open our minds. Now, this diagram is cerebral. On what issues do we agree? But then you say we need to open our eyes, we need to open our ears, we need to open our heart.
Yeah.
Can you talk about any one of those? Because most think tanks never get beyond mind.
Right.
And the idea that eyes, ears, and heart have a role in this is really interesting.
Yeah. Well, like I said, I don't know how the words just came to me. I mean, it was just flowing. But the original thought, and a lot of people think I was thinking about disease, which disease is part of it, but I really was thinking about death. I get this from my uncle. I have these real deep thoughts. And ultimately, I feel like scientists have said they still can't understand why the human body starts to decay at 25. Death is really not, we accept death as an option when it's really not. I mean, some animals live to be 100. We got a turtle that lives to be 200. And you got a parrot that lives to be 60. So it's variables. And I think we're focusing on you wearing red, you wearing blue, when the real enemy, death, lies, cheats, and kills. I lost my mother to cancer. And what cancer doesn't care about your color or my color or you're a little girl or you're an old woman. We're focusing. I said this in one interview. I feel like the Republicans and the Democrats are like two big dogs fighting over bone on the deck of the Titanic. No matter who wins, at the end, we all lose. So we got to come together. I mean, there's bigger fish to fry. There's cancer, there's AIDS, there is corona now. And ultimately, if we can put away death, then that would be a wonderful thing where you don't have to bury in your kids or your grandparents or anything. That's an enemy. It's going to wipe out everybody you know, everybody you're going to know, or everybody you have known. So that's where my head was. Open your mind, open your heart, open your eyes, really see the real enemy.
It's interesting because there's a line in this, one of your lyrics, when the real enemy lies, cheats, and kills, taking everything from us at will. I thought it was a political figure. I mean, I thought it was Donald Trump or something, given the level
well,
of
it
the
opens
level
itself
of
to multiple interpretations.
Yes,
that's the beauty of it.
Professor talking.
It does.
Yeah.
And,
That's the beauty of it. But for me, I was thinking about death. Now you can then plug in, that's the beauty of the lyric, so.
but how does
Well, if I can, I think that the thing that's so important about it is it's a pathway, right?
Yes.
It's saying we've got this really tough challenge, and you can assign any person, situation, or anything to it, and the way through is
to come it together.
and to do that, there's an opening, right? You have to think differently. The challenge that we have is, you mentioned the Republicans, Rod, and the Democrats fighting over a bone on the Titanic. I love that. But the problem is they don't realize that they if they kind of work with the bone together, they might be able to turn it into something like
a lifeboat
soup that could last much longer. They don't see the possibilities there because they haven't opened their minds. They may know there's some potential there, but they certainly haven't opened their hearts that says, all of this sort of external pressure for us to behave in certain ways. We're going to put that aside, and what we're going to do is we're going to work to figure out what's the best thing for the country or for our constituencies, whatever it might be. And that it's a thought change. The path is through a change in thinking. It's not a policy here or whatever.
I like that.
There's a thought change that needs to take place first, and that's one of the things that really attracted me to the song. That particular lyric about opening. It's about changing, removing the constraints that we've had as we think about how we address problems, whether it's death or a political figure or a particularly difficult political situation that needs to be solved. It's all the same. It's about thinking differently.
Well, Bruce,
and with hope and with inspiration, which is what the music brings as well here. So all those things work together really well, and we thought it was perfect for what we wanted to do.
If I could just say, I think about the American creed, e pluribus unum, out of many one. I mean, which is to say that there is in that idea of America, the idea that somehow there is that idea of a oneness, and the idea that it's going to be created out of multiple things, many things. Everybody has a place. In American political history, usually what fills the space between left and right is a national leader who has sufficient rhetorical gifts and a large enough heart that they can invoke elements of that. And I'm one of these people who was very moved. The summer of 2004, about a month after I'd gotten married, I'm married to an African American woman from Dallas, and we're sitting there. We've moved her in from Dallas to Oxford. We're trying to figure out what the next chapter of our collective life is going to be with her daughter, who was 16 at the time. And I'm watching TV, and I'm watching the Democratic National Convention. And I went back later to try to reconstruct this, because I was aware that we brought a mixed child into the world at an incredible moment. He was born in 2006. Barack Obama was elected in 2008. It's the first time in the world you could have a kid like ours point at the TV and go, "Someday, son, that could be you." I mean, But Obama said not a white America, not a black America, but the United States of America. And he said many other things, using his own life story, the father from Kenya, the mother from somewhere in the Midwest. And I found that profoundly moving. It was, for me, that was the idea of beloved community come back to life to some extent. And so whatever you thought of that president, he did have a rhetorical gift and an ability to fill the space, even if he was being outflanked on the right and outflanked on the left, to sort of fill the space and hold up an ideal. And Bruce, I feel like what you're saying is that in this song you hear a little bit of, or some of that. I was trying to fill the space with something that opens us out into another way of thinking and seeing. We don't really have that kind of leadership now. It may need to come from somewhere else. So,
Now, one last thing I would like to interject real quick is the power of music. I've seen it happen in nursing homes. When I wasn't singing the blues, I was going into nursing homes, assisted living facilities, and I would sing to the elderly, and I'll see people with advanced dementia come back and know every word of a song, but may not know their loved one next to them. But I've had directors come up with tears in their eyes trying to videotape people who they thought were really out of it, but the music. And I think whether you red or blue, black or white, certain songs, everybody started tapping their feet.
Pharrell Williams, Happy. That did it to me.
Exactly.
That did it to
Adam,
me.
I'd love to take you back for a minute to the streets. 128th Avenue in Harlem.
125th.
125th.
Yeah.
Close, but not close enough.
You have to walk a little bit.
Now, I may be reading more into this from the film than existed, but that was a fairly gutsy thing for you to stand together with an audience that was, at least in part, not convinced.
Well, no, you know what? I think you've let the film actually maybe distort my actual experience. What you need to understand is that there was only one moment in all those years, from '86 through about '91 when we stopped playing out there, when Giuliani came in and cleared people off the streets. There was only one time, and it was a profound moment. But it was 2 weeks after Spike Lee's Do the Right Thing came out in New York. I went back and I wanted to reconstruct. It was 2 weeks after that it opened in New York, and a couple of guys from Brooklyn came and challenged me. But the truth is, I did not have. Here's what I can tell you, because I went back and looked at my journal. After Michael Griffith got killed in Howard Beach, I was away in California. Just seeing a grandmother out there with my parents. I came back home, and so you'd had this murder, this racial murder, in New York City 2 weeks earlier, and I went and played with Sterling McGee, with Mr. Satan, on the street in Harlem. And what I wrote down when I got home was 200 people came up to me to shake my hand. Harlem was happy to see black and white together, at least the people who made their presence felt to me. Now, Peter Noel, who was in the documentary, said, "Hey, Adam, we knew you were out there." He was a progressive journalist, and he's a wonderful guy, and I used to read his writings. He was covering Al Sharpton in Brooklyn and all that stuff. He goes, "Yeah, I was with the black nationalists. We knew you were out there." He goes, "I'm surprised somebody didn't take you out." And I thought, my God, maybe I was in danger and I didn't know it. But the reason I didn't know it is because there were so many people who saw me and wanted to come up and chat. In some cases, some guy who one of our longtime fans who had brought a chair out there, and he was from West Virginia, and he wanted to talk to me about country music. He goes, he saw me, and he assumed white guy probably knows something about country music. And I knew nothing about country music, but my presence would be a pretext, as far more often than not, for people to connect, for people to say, I grew up with somebody like you. I had that more than once. People would come up and put their arm around me and go, and point to Mr. Satan and go, "You got to get him out of here." They didn't mean get the white boy out of here, the 29-year-old white guy. They meant, because you're white and you're from somewhere else, you must have connections in the music world, and we know how good he is. Because that's what people would say. We know how good he is. The rest of the world needs to see him. So there was also the sense that I might have connections. I didn't. As it happened, we ended up voyaging together from Harlem. Every now and then, we'd go to other places in New York. We'd play by Columbia. And we'd play down by Times Square, and it was at Times Square that a woman came who said, "I'd like to record you guys. Here's my card. When you're ready to go into the studio, let me know." And that's how it happened. We were sort of on neutral ground. We were everybody's busking act at that point, down in Times Square. So the place where I played on the street was a constant education for me. I mean, the number of lessons that I learned. One of the lessons that I learned, I think, was I remember early on feeling that I somehow had to try to prove that I had, through my sound, that I had the right to be there. And if I could bear down on the blue notes and sort of prove that I had that sound, but I would overplay. And nobody ever told me, you're overplaying. They just wouldn't stop. The crowd would keep going by. And when I began to let go of that desire to impress, and it happened pretty early because one day I figured out what it was, and just let our bodies kind of move together almost and find the common groove and just reinforce what he was doing. We would do a lot, we actually do a song on the album that we have. The album's called Come Together Too, which is has a harp line that I came up with trying to play along with Mr. Satan.
The other morning.
We could do it. That's good. Yeah,
No,
that's a
wait a
song on the
minute.
album.
We haven't gotten you to sing yet. You remind
That's
me.
true.
You should have carried on there.
We could try. Well, we could try. How about we could try?
You could
Does
do
it-
that one. I
Let's
sung along with that one. Try that one.
Why don't we
Just a little
try?
bit. We
let-
can always
let's-
delete it if it don't turn. If it,
Sure,
if it doesn't
from
sound
Donna.
right.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Let's try that one. It's called Seventh Avenue, or Oh She Was Pretty was the original
Yeah.
version that Sterling McGee that he recorded years ago, but we called it Seventh Avenue, and it was about a pretty girl walking. You see somebody walking, and you call to him. Let's try it.
Stepped out the other morning without a warning. Loving jumped on my mind. Turned out the corner, it might sound funny. Gotta tell y'all what I did find. A lot of girls, they were listening to the radio. You know they were having summer fun. I did myself some talking and got me one. And man, oh, that woman was pretty. You know what? She was like a flowery man. Lord, 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 I'm sorry. I fooled around, y'all, and she got away. They gotta pay for more. They gotta pay for that.
Wow. Is that possible? Do you have real-time synchronization in Zoom? That would be incredible if this happens.
Technology is a marvelous thing.
They'll do it. They'll do it. Cool.
Let me go back, Adam, to the point you were making about presidents. By the way, thank you.
Okay. You won't. Yeah.
This image of the country being brought together by a powerful speaker. You have nothing to fear but feel yourself. I feel your pain. What if we don't have that? What if we don't have that this election? What if we don't have it in the next election? Is it possible that what Bruce is trying to do with Common Ground and so many other groups around the country right now, can civil society make up some of that by the quality of listening, of thinking, of hearing, the qualities of heart, music, communication? Do you see a possibility to break the hold of the sort of great man theory, great president theory, and find another source of hope and progress?
Well, I hope so. I hope Common Ground can do it. I hope all these groups collectively. I do think it requires people to testify, and it requires people to be brave. I love that new agey idea that being people who are brave are not people who aren't fearful. It's just they're people who walk forward anyway. And so I do think that some of that is required. Some kind of let's take a step forward. If the example of Rod and me can do anything, it might be. Sometimes you take that first step, you don't know what's going to happen. And sometimes it feels like something from Ralph Waldo Emerson, great, like every great trip starts with that first step almost. And sometimes you have to take that first step. So if somebody were listening to this and they say, well, what can I do? I might say, well, think about your life? Is there something that you haven't done yet that you feel you should be doing that maybe you haven't done? I hope that civil society, but civil society has a whole lot of moving parts. And obviously civil society means being civil to each other. I think that's a part of it. But
There's a thought.
But, I like Van Jones, the messy truth. Sometimes it's a question of allowing for the messy truth, not trying to tie everything up, but the dialogue, and that's an old, I was listening to somebody talk about it, going back to the Greeks, the idea that truth emerges through dialogue. I think it's an incredibly important idea. And social media has really contributed to as much as any other single force, I think, to our sort of fragmentation. It has these other potentials, and I think Bruce's Common Ground does a really good job, and I think music is the other thing that can be brought to us. I do think we need live music. I feel like I should be making a pitch for when the pandemic is over and you need a party band.
Yes.
We'll come to your home and play this music for you. But of course,
one thing I want to
what
interject.
are we gonna do? Yeah.
I want to interject, Adam. It's the secret weapon. What I think our old eyes are not seeing is, since I'm a motivational speaker and I go into schools and I talk to kids about bullying and stay away from drugs, it's the youth. See, I've been on the front line with youth for over 10 years, and whether I'm in the Kentucky up in the mountains or down in Mississippi or Florida or here in Atlanta in the hood, there's a spirit. If I play a particular song, the kids in Kentucky know the same song, or in the woods of Mississippi, they all know the same music because of the internet. And so this old spirit of racism and division, it's a dying thing. I mean, look at the protests. That's a testament to it, because they all connected now. They know through YouTube that black people do goofy things, and we know white folks do goofy things. But then we find out some surprises that, hey, that white boy can dance just like us, and we say, oh, that. And so that's the beauty of the internet, and that's the beauty of the youth, and all those old barriers. Now we could keep trying to hold them up, but ultimately I know in my spirit, I know that the good guys win. So you only could be bad and keep trying to push up and try to divide for so long, but ultimately, I think good will win.
I just point out, I think the challenge out there is not that people don't want to see things work differently. They really do. And in fact, there's a number of studies, I won't go into them here, that show pretty clearly that people want something different. The difference is that we're in a time right now where there's not conviction that things can change. That's the problem. People are concerned that we're just kind of stuck and we're not going to be able to make any progress on these issues because we're so divided. But they're looking for change. And the thing that is so important about our work, and we know others are similarly involved, is that when they do see it work, that is that spark of inspiration that drives them to think and act differently. A very quick story. When I was a kid, I'm sure some of you saw the ad with the Native American with the tear, and it was an outcry against how we were polluting the environment and so forth. And I grew up in a very conservative family, but I became very environmentally concerned at that point in time, and that was what did it. Was just that thing that said, I can see it. We actually can do better, and the ad was a call to action, to think and do better. And when people can see that can happen, that's when you start to change minds, and they start to engage in their lives in ways that they hadn't up to that point. And so what you say about the music and the youth seeing all of these different elements, which ultimately bring a sense of we don't have to be as divided as we are. We actually can find points of where we can agree. Music is classic, right? You have different styles of that you may like, but somebody totally different from you may have that same sense. It's not quite the same as political view, but it's a point where, you know, you're now connecting as human beings on something that you both care about. And that can play itself out into situations that currently are, you know, really, really tough, where the divisions are so strong that people will not talk to each other. And we're sensing anyway that the population, the Americans, they're getting very tired of it, and they just need to see that it can be done differently. And to your point, that Adam, about that first step on the journey, that first step is so important as long as people see it. And you know, we each have a role to play. We can all take that first step in bridging divides, talking with others that we know disagree with us, and really listening to understand why they think that way before we draw judgments about their character. It's not hard. It can be done.
This may be a good time to end this very interesting session. And if I can thank Rod and Adam and Bruce and Sterling McGee, who isn't with us today, but whose inspiration in a way brought us all together, certainly the three of you. So thank you for your work, and see you again soon, I hope.
Thanks, Gail.
Gail. Thank you very
Gail.
much.
Thanks.
Really appreciate it.